I think one of the gifts of the Taoist tradition and practice is the way it addresses the full spectrum, both from physical body, and we can do Dao Yin, and we can get healthy and feel better and sleep better and eat less, and we can do these kind of structural improvements to the way our days go and the way we feel as we move through time and space. And then that, as the tradition shows us and proves to us as we practice, that is the foundation for the subtle energy work that will heal energetic, emotional layer and set into motion a cycling of refinement and self-harmonization that, when it arrives at balance, then has established the foundation of stability and clarity that allows for higher level alchemy to initiate. It really itself initiates, but this building from the bottom up, from the body to the energy to the spirit.
And welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and Sifu, Daoist Master San Qing, and I have an incredible guest here today. I've really been welcoming and looking forward to this conversation with a fellow Daoist priest. I want to welcome to the podcast Duncan, Li Xing Hui. How are you, my dear friend?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here with you today, and looking forward to what we might meander through and into.
Right. And I mean, this is something, it's like a resurgence. A lot of people don't really have a clear path of the Taoist seeker realization, or just generally even any sort of form of Taoist history. And quite frankly, a lot of people tend to manipulate this sort of agenda of what it was, where it came from, how it was created. And, you and I both know that the truth is your truth, and that's the only truth you need to be concerned with. And so how you acquire this understanding of knowing is part of your Taoist seeker journey. And, coming from different lineages, it all sort of varies, and it's a variation of what, from my perspective as a Taoist, the perfection of the diamond. It's another facet of consciousness that people present their journey and their viewpoint. I would love you to share with the audience a little bit about yourself leading up to this point.
Sure. I've been practicing intensively since maybe 2006 or so, when I met my first teacher. My journey started, as many journeys do, with a kind of mysterious injury, ailment that could not be resolved or understood by conventional means. And so I found my way through various serendipities to Master Wu Zhongxian, who teaches in traditional ways and was living in America, but is Chinese. And we had a strong resonance, and I became committed to the practice pretty much from day one. The journey with Master Wu was one of methods and metaphysics, and an intensive practice. I managed to fit in, 6 or 8 hours a day of practice for a bunch of years under his guidance, and the changes that followed were quite clear and strong and enduring. And so that compounded my commitment and enthusiasm. And he teaches from hermit lineages. And soon after I met and started studying with him, I went to China with him and some other students. And I met a teacher and visited a temple that I had a very clear kind of recognition, mutual recognition with. And that was Abbot Ju at the Dragon Gate Caves Ancestral Temple. And it took me 10 years, not speaking Chinese and not able to kind of travel on my own. It took me 10 years to of pretty much constant will and intent to come around to having the opportunity to go back, and with a translator who facilitated my relationship with Master Ju, and I became ordained in that lineage. And that is a particular kind of protected lineage within the Dragon Gate sect. It is the source lineage. It is where Chuchuji began his monastic community, and taught Genghis Khan. And up until my joining and being ordained, there had never been a Westerner or a householder who had joined the lineage. So I was very honored to have that opportunity, and I am doing my best to not dilute the strength of that historical gem that we carry. So I've been talking for a bit. I'll release it to some back and forth here, but that's what comes up when you ask.
Yeah, that's a profound, amazing journey. It seems to be sort of another validator with the Taoist seeker's path, is finding that which is revealed to you that would be unassuming, as were the very construct of the first incantation within what we refer to, or I refer to, as the magical register, which is the Tao Te Ching. And the translation that I just recently put out, which is the 2024 version, through communication with Letsu, which I've been channeling for 30 years. You know, it's like you get to a certain point, the highest level of ascension for a Taoist, and everything that I train people in is direct source information. When you go deeper into the roots of Taoism, right back to the Yellow Emperor's sort of like relationship with the whispers of the universe that gave him guidance to construct what we consider as the Chinese, culture today, going through multiple emperors and variable dialects of the language, right down to simplified and traditional, which is sort of separating Cantonese with Mandarin that people speak quite consistently through the Chinese landscape. You have this variable. And so to level up that level of consciousness, which just seems to be a very hot topic right now, right back to when Bruce Lee rolled it out with one of those interviews in the 70s where it's like, you must flow like water. And everyone's like, man, whatever he's saying is like so wow factor. And, it came from his seeking Taoist methods, his seeking Taoist understanding of what his real journey was, that ultimately led to his, untimely sort of demise physically. I personally did a channel with him months ago. It's on it's on the YouTube channel, and he went
I didn't see it there.
Yeah, he went deep into the conversation of how he was cursed and how that affected his, his basically him, his firstborn, and just this energy attempting to dismantle his representation within this incarnation. And so, yeah, you get to this point. And so for everything I teach it comes down to that, as you know, just the resonance of you and I having this conversation, the amplitude of the energy, you feel this expansion that we speak of, this symbiotic sort of like relationship that you have as one. You know, we return to that. And so within the incantations, the first acknowledgement is the way to walk is not the way. The name that's named is not the name. And this is the perplexing part. Everyone's like, Jifu, well, what does that even mean? Well, everything within the Tao Te Ching is a representation returning you to the knowing of the center point, perfection. And so each facet of that incredibly powerful magical register is this deeper knowing that you're returning. It's like the mirroring effect that comes within Taoism, a deeper knowing of the bellows that we refer to as, you know, all things. You're all things and nothing at the same time. This contracting and expanding that comes with the inner knowing. And then we capture this thing that, you know, Bruce Lee calls the flow, baby, you know, the Wu Ji, the stillness between the breath in and the breath out. It always returns back to the simplicity. And, you know, when you're at your highest, you're at your lowest, this understanding that the perception is altered by a dear friend of mine who's a Buddhist monk. He calls it the dukkha. The distortion of this reality is the emotional content. It's like, can you step past that? Can you reveal the true nature of reality through this journey as a seeker? And I feel like Taoism is so sought after because it's so mysterious, because we have methods of internal alchemy that are second to none, in my opinion. And when you find someone that can actually give you that direct source, which comes back to the experiencer, right? The knowing that you get as a Taoist seeker is the feeling that comes from the expansion. And so you can instantly have this access of what we call consciousness or channeling from the contracting and expanding that is this very moment, this present moment, that doesn't come in any form that you would identify with as the physical flesh that looks back in the mirror as your personality. So I just love the way that you explained your journey and the deeper nature. It's like we get to this point. I have people, you know, that reach out to me across the globe that want to get deeper into the internal alchemy practices. And I think a lot of people tend to steer away, or they have this version where, you know, there are different methods. There's 1,000 ways up the mountain. None are right or wrong. It's just, where are you at in your own level of consciousness, in my opinion? And so the self-evident realization for any seeker is being able to conjure this substance that we call the chi, the pure perfection, the mother, which is that direct source. So how do you access that? And that's where people seek the Taoist teacher to give them a better insight into creating that internal alchemy. Is that something that you tend to focus on? Everyone has their own focus. Like my Taoist, my Buddhist monk friend, he's like, I don't like the way, I'm not interested in the energy. All I want to do is observe my pain and suffering. Okay, hey, that's your deal. You do you, my friend. And so I tend to find that is a large component within a Taoist seeker's path, is the internal alchemy practices. How is it presented for yourself and how you teach others?
Yeah, it has been primary for me as well. I think one of the gifts of the Daoist tradition and practice is the way it addresses the full spectrum, both from physical body, and we can do Dao Yin, and we can get healthy and feel better and sleep better and eat less, and we can do these kind of structural improvements to the way our days go, and the way we feel as we move through time and space. And then that, as the tradition shows us and proves to us as we practice, that is the foundation for the subtle energy work that will heal energetic, emotional layer and set into motion a kind of cycling of refinement and self-harmonization that when it arrives at balance, then has established the foundation of stability and clarity that allows for higher level alchemy to initiate. Really, it self-initiates, but this kind of building from the bottom up, from the body to the energy to the spirit, it's just so reliable.
You had me at hello, my dear friend.
What's that?
You had me at hello.
So, I think that a certain kind of Taoist or a Buddhist can make great progress by simply focusing on scriptural study, and even in at the end of the QingYun, it says the lower practitioner will simply carry this scripture around, not even reading it, and it will benefit their path and their life. And lower is not a superiority thing. It's simply like, as you mentioned, it's you meet the practice where you're at, and if you don't, you can't go anywhere. But if you meet it where you're at, then it can take you from there. And so there are other methods that are address only part of the spectrum, and they're effective if they meet the practitioner who needs that. Alternatively, we provide potentially a full spectrum practice that virtually guarantees your progress and accomplishment if you follow the path diligently. And that's pretty remarkable, I think. And other traditions have it too. I've studied with some Bun Buddhist teachers, and the structure of the practice is very similar, and it's an extraordinary tradition, and they have energetic and physical practices, and they have with slightly different language, similar understandings, and it's wonderful and bears fruit, But on the other hand, there aren't very many that address the practitioner in this full spectrum way that can iron out any obstacles at each layer.
Amen to that, brother. It really does come down to, I always tell people, it's like you start with being curious. You're like, oh, I had a conversation with my grandmother. I had a premonition. I felt energy. I witnessed a physical healing. There was some type of paranormal intersection of what you perceived as your reality that goes, aha, elementary, my dear Watson. And now you have this whole new, desire within you that conjures up this, seeker's path, the Taoist seeker's path of accumulating a greater development of your ability to access this state and be it replicable, repeatable. And this is where Taoist methods of alchemy are second to none, in my opinion. And so, I always tell people, you have facets. Your senses are, this physical flesh and blood is a barometer, a tuning fork for your experience, past and beyond what you perceive as a 3D reality. If we want to get all quantum-ish on us, we'll give the quantum sort of perspective, which gives insight into these sort of like fundamental dimensions that help you sort of understand what it is that you're stepping in and out of. From a Taoist perspective, everything is yin and yang, and your goal or your achievement of recognizing and realizing who you are is returning to the center point, returning to the Wu Ji, accessing that understanding that you can then be Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort. The perception that this materialism is the identity that's necessary for you to acquire that is, you know, false, 100% false. And so, another dear friend of the channel, E from Dharma, Why Dharma channel. I don't know whether you've ever seen him. I did an interview with him, and he's a seeker. He loves all things, metaphysical philosophy, getting deep into the nature of Rumi and Buddha and Lao Tzu, and all these things are being revealed to him, and he has this incredible messaging in how he does it. But his answer is, you need to be done by the Tao, being done, being embodied that moment. And so when you speak on that, is like, I am a facilitator as a catalyst and conduit to help you remember and return to who you really are, that center point. And so that comes in this sort of transmutation of the fundamentals of this electromagnetic spectrum, which is, energy. We speak on that. We separate it. We put it together. We separate the electric from magnetic. We create this deeper understanding. This internal alchemy processes is what we return to, that gives you the ability to be repeatable. There's a validation, a self-evidence realization that this is real. It is not a delusion, that you have this ability to access this state of awareness that is this present moment, and you can now show others. And whether it comes in the form of me enveloping my forearm, running a skewer through it and going, wow, there's no entry and exit point, pulling it out. These are fundamental sort of understandings of a deeper nature of Nigong or Nidan, the internal alchemy, understanding what it takes to get that secret source so you can embody the present moment. And people go, whoa, that is not on my menu. That does not, that's a miracle, in my opinion, and so this alchemy practice is really interesting for me, because there's so many versions. I honestly, people don't understand the plight, the suffering of the Taoist over the thousands of years, and we have fallen to the sword of many emperors, either erasing us off the planet of the earth, because when you get that much access to consciousness, the Taoist advisor, the Taoist alchemist, is a potential threat from someone who stays in this state that wants to access all these levels of consciousness. So when you bring back to that full spectrum that you spoke of, I find it really beautiful, because that's how I teach people, is this perfection. So you have this sensory perception, which starts off with 5 senses. And then as you start to level up your alchemy, all of a sudden that 5 turns into 8, turns into 100, turns into 1,000. There is no limit to your access point, which comes with the self-realization and the validation of that through that internal alchemy practice. And that substance is very tangible and can be transmuted into all different types of things, which levels out the excess or the deficiency, which is something that when I teach people how to, get deep into the sort of like simple things like clairvoyance and things of that nature, you start to be able to read the energies of the ecosystem of the individual. So what's the reveal is the excess or the deficiency, the emotion to the virtue. What we're looking for as a Taoist is to reveal the virtue through the harmony that you create within this ecosystem that is an expression of the macro, which is the universe. You are beholden to this incredible gift as an ambassador to planet Earth, to raise the collective consciousness, to return to who you are, to remember this selflessness, which is the true center point of who you are. And that selflessness comes with this servitude. The selflessness comes with that service that is the beauty. Like that charge that you got up your Taiji pole right now, that amplitude of realization. We are hovering and oscillating with the very messaging that you and I both know to be true. And so I'd love you to speak more on
my teacher used to say, my master Jew passed last year about this time. He was in his mid to late 90s.
Oh, beautiful.
But he used to say, I don't know anything about practice. I'm just a janitor for the immortals.
Yes.
Which reminded me of what you were saying just then. But I wanted to draw out part of what you were saying earlier, with my own words a little bit, which is that this progression that I was speaking of earlier, from the physical to the sort of partially physical, the energy world to the immaterial, that the practice pulls you through, is important for those early stages are important, not just for becoming healthy and quiet, but the direct experience of feeling, seeing qi, and more subtle levels just can't but transform the way you understand the world, if you let it. I mean, plenty of people don't let it, but if you really follow the consequences of that experience and it being repeatable and non-imaginary, then it has drastic consequences for the way before that experience we had understood the world. And so that progression is highly effective for that reason as well, because if we just talk about being and non-being, Wuji and Taiji, we can come to a conceptual understanding, and
that's where they
useful, that's helpful, but true understanding, of course, is to integrate that, and for it to be a wordless, speechless, it's the speechless teaching, it's the teaching without words. For it to reach that level of understanding, it has to be experienced. These are the stepping stones along the Taoist path. And you can get lucky. You can do no other practice other than quiet sitting in a sort of Zen-like context. And maybe someday, boom, something happens. And, but maybe not. Whereas the progressive practice, as I said, nearly guarantees that progress. So I find it, beautiful and impressive in those ways. So I think there are many alchemies and there are many Taoisms, and some of them are perverted to other, or just like reshaped to serve somebody's purpose, and that's its own negative thing. But even among sincere practitioners with authentic lineages, there's extreme diversity.
I'm a showman. It's like, it's just let's get down with the get down. I'll do the Pepsi challenge with anybody. It just comes down to show me. It's as you said, it's a non-audible experience. It's non-verbal. It's the feeling. The experiencer will have a feeling that is second to none. What any of my students, disciples, OGs, the Way 126 subscribers to this channel, love me having conversations with incredible guests like yourself, because they experience this energetic potential and the substance from this collective. And so, it's like literally a masterclass in that very now moment. And
transmission is very real, but transmission is primary in my, I teach methods that are extremely effective, and I have amazing teachers, but transmission, in a sense, is the only thing happening, and the rest is just riding on that. And from my first teacher, Master Wu, I experienced, several direct, like bright light transmissions that had instant effect on my practice. And then, for example, being at the Dragon Gate Caves Temple for the first time, for one thing, the whole valley and mountain is just vibrating, and it's one of those cliffside temples. So you climb up to the highest cliff, and it's facing east, and the mist is rising, and it's almost like a voice. The vibration is so tangible, viscous, and then there's a cave. Some of the younger priests showed us around the back, and this other part of the valley, not accessible by. Actually, we were the first Western tourists to go there, but it was not known or accessible even to regular temple visitors. This other cave, and it's the cave of the three immortals, and it's where Chuchuji and these other saints, realized ones, completed their realization before there was any temple structure, and it's these deep caves in this limestone cliff, and it existed, but it was also modified with hammer and chisel, and there were these pools that collected water so they could sustain themselves. And but we practiced, and sometimes by myself, I practiced in this cave, and again, the vibration was just extraordinary. And of course, if you sounded a mantra, it just like filled the space and filled your empty center. And then when I went home, I carried that with me, and that space and that feeling, and then eventually, as my practice developed, the inhabitants of that cave would show up to me in meditation, in dream, and eventually in waking life. And that is to communicate the power and the importance of transmission from place and from person. And the students I took back to be ordained at the Dragon Gate Caves Temple a year or two later, from my ordination visit, which was solo, had the same experience, had the same, partly the temple of, the community of monks and nuns, their spirit is very warm and inclusive and accepting, and also very strict and clear and traditional. So there's that sort of cultural transmission. There's that kind of vessel of community transmission. But then underlying this is this extraordinary. I've explained it before, like it felt like a steel cable dropping into place between me and source, between me and lineage source. And it's just such a visceral and supportive when you walk away from that experience to have. And so, yeah, I've said to my students that, these methods are treasures, literally, and they carry everything you might need, in the scriptures as well. But what's happening here is transmission, and it's not me being special. It's not I have some power. It's just I am a gate, and it's coming through, and that's what I have to offer. And I think it's necessary to have that from one source or another. It doesn't always have to be an individual. It can be a place. It can be a karmic rhythm that opens up, but it is essential one way or the other.
Oh yeah, without question. When I'm in constant communication with Latsu on a second by second basis. Basically, I don't assume that I know anything. Anything that comes out of my mouth is not coming from me. So I'm as dumb as a sack of rocks. Yet there's information that goes beyond that. I've been channeling him for decades at this point, and when you get that, there's a visceral feeling. So when I do a recording of a transmission from Latsu, it's visceral, and people go, "Whoa, this is some digital recording you made a month ago, and I'm feeling the whole thing. I didn't think it was possible." It's a present moment. It's captured and imprinted into that. That's part of the alchemy. And when we go deep into the magic of Taoism, the fundamentals of that are imprinted into the fabric of what you call this distortion, which is cut from the cloth of perfection, the mother. So you have variables of your attention, intention that have sort of distorted the tangible materialism that you see before you. That's the sort of like the craft table of perfection. You're cutting out all these things that they come in the form of light, wave, and now they're turned into material, and that evidence is then presented by, it is an energy. The energy has a vibration. That vibration has a frequency, and if you meet that frequency, the resonance is second to none. It's equal to or greater than. This is what we are speaking of for all the people watching this podcast. This is what it means. The visceral kinesthetic response that comes from the now moment is what's tangible, and it's imprinted. Once I infuse something, I open a gateway, which I am just a gateway. So, I teach very deeply with all my 171 teachers within my lineage, and the three pure ones are really my outside of Latsu. Latsu is a separate frequency. Supreme Purity is a separate frequency. Jade Emperor is a separate frequency. Jade Purity is a separate frequency. Ling Bao is a separate frequency. Highest Purity is a separate frequency. And when you start to realize you can tap into these and get direct source information through your relationship that is given to you from your path, from your lineage, from your basically surrendering and returning to that center point, they will reveal themselves. I'm never a fan of this idea that people subscribe to deity magic. You have to understand that from a Daoist cultivational practice, you are dealing with direct source. When I channel my teachers, I see them as clear as I see you. I hear them as clear as I hear you. They're present. They're always around me. This is a whole different ball game than what we're speaking of in just general cultivational practices that might be as simplistic as a qigong, nigong sort of thing. And so that lineage of understanding and how you develop that primordial realization is, there's 9 levels that I normally train people in. It starts with the physical body, energetic body, spiritual body. Then it turns into the sun body, the earth body, the moon body. Finally, it ends with the oneness, the ultimate, and then being with all things. And so that progression of development, and that's the tangible part. It's like, whoa, that's visceral. Whatever he's saying is real. I am getting the expansion from that. It is coming at a subatomic level within the very physicality that is represented as this barometer, this tuning fork. And so that's a fantastic indicator for someone to get an idea of what we're speaking of. Now, that being with all things is that direct source channeling. Now, many decades ago, I literally started my path channeling Latsu first go. My teacher had 60 years natural born biological time spent, and he was like, what the, how do you, he went from this humble teacher to completely pissed, not happy at all with his journey. It's like, at the time I was I had a different appearance. I was more a bodybuilder appearance. It came from a physical material sort of state, and I had this intuitive knowing that I had to seek something greater, a deeper understanding of that. Now, reflecting on all this stuff, you realize you were doing it anyway, but then instantly Lao Tzu came in, and he's never left me, and the amplitude only gets stronger. And when I teach people a deeper understanding of this information, like you said, it's like what most people, I get attorneys, judges, energy workers, light workers, massage therapists, Chinese medicine doctors, you name it, they all return back to the energy. They know that's the truth. They know that they're very limited in relation to what they're going to achieve from a healing perspective. They're always disappointed with the outcome. And when you get to the infrastructure, and so the same consensus is this: they don't access the mother, they access their own life force, which in return, the biggest red flag is, oh, that was a long day, I'm exhausted. Oh, I just did a session with someone, I'm spent. And these are the very fundamentals from a Taoist, realizing your constitution, your Jing, is what you enter into this realm with, which is basically a level up. You're getting your basic understanding of your gene expression, what you would consider your hereditary like disposition of your history, your ancestors. Well, that's just the baseline. I always let people know that's the beauty of Taoist alchemy. You can come in, I use it as a battery pack and go, you were born into this world with a constitution. You had 80% battery pack. Now we're going to teach you the cultivation practices to bring it to 100, from 100 to 1,000, from 1,000 to 9,000. Always an interesting magical number. Now that, when you stay at that point, you are accessing the mother as you should. You're not being limited by the idea that this physical body is the tool that you're going to use. Because Jade Emperor always reminds you, let the man who's never left the village, let him know he's seen the world. Let him know that it's right there. You have it all. It's all within you. Now that sounds very, conceptual to most listening to our conversation, until they're able to find the guidance and the mastery from yourself or myself, giving them insight. Because I feel like there was a disservice back in the 80s. Someone stole a bunch of different, variable cultivational practices, which would be the injection of what some people consider the microcosmic orbit as one of the first, entry points as a Taoist, a cultivational practice. I have yet to this day, no matter how many people push it out, been able to witness an offering that is direct source cultivational practice. It's always a 3 pieces here, 1 there. It's missing 5. It's for your own benefit. I don't want you to have this because it's very dangerous. Well, we know what that really means. The manipulation of the realm of man. Here we have it. And, you get it in all forms. And there are self-proclaimed masters and grandmasters of this stuff. And I say, I really appreciate that title. I couldn't care less how many lineages you have or whatever it is. Show me what it is that you speak of. I want to see it. And then, hey, most people are like, I gotta go. well, no, yeah, because I know, having met you, and I know myself, I know that what I teach goes way beyond any of the alchemy practices that were given to me as an ordained priest. It goes directly into guidance and direct training from Lao Tzu, Jade Emperor, highest purity, Ling Bao, and I go straight to it. I'm just finishing up an Immortal sort of like a sort of guideline for all Taoists, which is a huge book. And I go into great depth of conversation with all these individuals. Like the Yellow Emperor story is wild. And when I get deeper into it and I talk to him, wow, people go, holy crap, I've never heard this before, because you've never had a direct communication from that source, and it's real because you feel it through your whole body. It's like, I don't need to give you, oh, well, where did you get this from? What does that mean? Well, it came from the text and the history of, the Chinese government giving it. That's nonsense. A lot of that, whatever you get online is, and I'm just going to say it as a personality, a lot of my students are like, Jufu, but you're a priest, you're the teacher. You can't have a personality. Oh, yes, I can. And it's important that you realize that you can differentiate the difference. But what happens is the faster you get to the servitude, the selflessness that comes with your path, this doesn't distort your reality. You can use it and realize that you don't want to erase your personality because it's part of the gift that was given to you in how you discovered this insight in this incarnation. Okay, so realize that I like driving my side-by-side in the desert at 100 miles an hour, and I like eating chocolate and watching Netflix. This does not distract from when, as you, through your own admission, you're a gateway. I'm a catalyst, a conduit of this information. It's a resonance that is acquired that goes beyond the spoken word. And so the highest level of ascension from everything I teach to people is that direct source. And when you're able to obtain that, you're a seeker, you turn into a knowing, and you return to who you are, and you become part of the collective that brings everyone to that space of you're all things and nothing at the same time. And that's where we access the mother. And then all of a sudden, all bets are off and magical things take place. Now, I'd like to talk to you about the alchemy process, because most people go back to the periodic table. They look at some of these things. They've got a few, misconceptions of cultivating water and fire and all this kind of good stuff. And it gets interesting. But when I reveal the construct of how I teach people, it goes completely against the foundation of alchemy. And so people are like, whoa. So I got this teaching directly from, Jade Purity, because he's the keeper of information. He resides right here in the center point, and he reveals, the connection with the earth, the magnetism that you possess within this physical flesh as you attune to the alchemy process. But, upper Dantian is the sun, middle Dantian is the earth, lower Dantian is the moon, and people go, whoa, that's not what I was taught, that you can only store the energy in the fire in the cauldron. And then I had one of my guests, and she's like, holy moly, yes. And she started going into it, and it's like, I didn't want to reveal it, but like she went deeper. Normally I teach that on a much closer level, more a close session where the student gets deep into it. But that's the primordial mother, is the lower Dantian. And so people go, but Jiffa, that's supposed to be the fire. That's where you put all the energy, and everything gets transmuted from there. And it's that, oh, no. This is the misdirection of, guess what? The name is not the name. The way is not the way. And this is where people get all, and for me, it's like, I'll show you the alchemy practices, and it will transmute into manifestation, magic, healing. It will be self-evident for you, and you will feel that visceral response. And, where did I get this from? I went beyond the teachings that were given to me as a priest, and got it directly from my teacher, Latsu, from my teacher, Jade Emperor, from my teacher, Highest Purity. And then you validate it through your ability to access, because it's all, again, conjecture, contemplation, theory, hypotheses. None of that stuff means anything until you can show me. And I feel like that's a really important thing from a Taoist alchemy perspective, is to show me that. So that's the light, that's the information, and the energy is the lower Dantian. And so many people get like, that goes against everything that I've been taught within like a Nigong sort of like practice. But there's a lot of things when people go, well, there's 16 principles to Nigong. No, sorry. You start with the Nigong. We always work with the highest ascension. The highest number is 9. Why would someone give you 16 of anything? Why would you get off the track of the revealing of the mother, right? From conception to birth of human life is the reflection of who you are. That's that mirroring effect. And here's what, I always use this. Jade Emperor gave me this incantation, 20, 30 years ago. In a power abundant in its giving, you will receive. Unifying the body with the spirit with the energy. bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And then, well, what does that mean, Jifil? Well, first and foremost, when you're in service not to just others. You're in service to yourself. Oh, well, I want to sign up for that. I'm in for that now, because you get past this ego-based stuff and realize that if you have to think, you are not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling. That is the very essence of Taoism. I kind of sometimes I parallel it to a Gnostic path of realization, and people go, "Oh, I get that." Yeah. What are your thoughts on the alchemy process? As we already admit through our own admission earlier in the conversation, there are a million ways up the path. I'm sure you have your own version of that.
Well, I think on the one hand, there are a lot of versions, and on the other hand, there are levels, and the understanding is different at different levels. And so what I hear, I don't know where your 9 levels come from, but it maps also to in the book of Central Harmony, or Center and Harmony, by the Hong. I don't know. I'm very familiar with the book, and I'm spacing the name, but he identifies those 9 levels, or upper, middle, and lower, upper, middle, and lower, middle, etc. And I kind of heard that in the way you described those levels. So as you say, a lot of misinformation and really malintent came through in the first encounter in the 60s and 70s with Taoist culture and kind of Qigong culture. Qigong, of course, is intentionally a neutered, remove the goal was to remove the devotion and spirit and tradition from these practices,
Turn it into a mechanism, right?
As imposed by Mao, to sort of make it scientific. And so that's kind of what was coming over, right? It's just this energetic thing for health, or like sexual vitality, which brings in the people or whatever. But so there's we still are dealing with the misunderstandings from that time and that first encounter. But nonetheless, there is a level at which we're dealing with fire and water. We've got mind, we've got body, mind being fire, body being water, and the goal is to stabilize, to get familiar with energy, to depending on who's teaching you, you're either like trying to circulate energy, or you're waiting for the energy to build until it self initiates its movement, which is my orientation. And then that cycle of refinement leads you to all of that again at this more subtle symbolic level. And then that repeats again. And so that would be, I think, analogous in your system to the sun, earth, moon. And then that repeats again with the being and non-being level, and the Wuji and the Tao. And that level is a non-conceptual abiding in deep stillness. It's a non-meditation meditation, and it's still alchemy. It's the final stages of transformation and integration and merging. So I find it useful to teach at all those levels, and but I do encounter the challenge that you do when people come in with an idea of what it is, or even just in response to the language. Maybe they're picking up on your language, but they're trying to fit it to some understanding they had of some book or YouTube thing. And so, a student might say, when I breathe in, I feel the fire breath descending. It's like, oh, no, you don't. Like, that's not what's going on here. So if you're imagining that and it's not what's happening, it's not just neutral, like it's a negative impact on your development. So there's a lot of taking care with language that I find myself navigating, and sometimes I haven't arrived at a single solution to those challenges. Sometimes I just stop using the language. I just stop talking, and sometimes I try to triangulate and sort of reduce and simplify and try and make the meaning of the word, the only meaning that is possible is the meaning that I mean. And I don't always succeed at that. And, sometimes I think I do, and then I hear something repeated back to me later, and I'm like, we got to go back to that. But I think it's a powerful framework, and it's a very versatile, flexible framework, and it not only helps you understand the path and process and kind of step by step what's next, and to recognize an experience, in the poetic language, recognize an experience that you're going through. It's like, oh, okay, so this is where I am, and this is what that is and what it means. But then also there's kind of a Zen absurdist way about it too, that the paradoxes kind of break your idea of what you think you know in productive ways to get you to the next mind opening, consciousness opening, understanding opening step.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people that are out there on social media peddling Nigong practices are more, and I'm just going to be honest with you, more charlatan-like. And I get a lot of students that have spent 10, 15 years training under some of these people with the hopes of, and that's not how it works. This is not how you operate. I will get you off to the races feeling the substance almost instantaneously, because that's part of my position as a catalyst and conduit to reveal the resonance. And it's really important because there are no coincidences. This is part of this center point realization of returning. You're in the right place at the right time for everything. And so, oh, well, I wasted 15 years. No, you didn't. This is where you needed to be. And now you're here. And now things are, because people get like, whoa, it's like, I've never experienced that. It's instantaneous. It's like, that's the present moment. That's how it works. It's not a drawn out progression. I think this is the fundamental suffering that most people want to go over. You have your own development and your own skill set that you acquire, but through these methods, it's repeatable. And, I always tell people, you can be like me, and instantaneously access Latsu and get direct source information. And then I went backwards in, learning the semantics of techniques and rituals through my priesthood, that I already had access to the substance and the ability to see instant change without any of the semantics. And it's kind of like, okay, well, that can happen. That's part of like even a neural based, if you wanted to sort of, as you said, I don't think people understand. I remind people, Mao performed genocide on the Chinese people, like to a level where, we're talking 60 million. You think there's some historic moments of inhumane sort of levels of diabolical human like psychosis that comes with, you know, human history. This guy wanted to wipe the planet Earth of all people, and especially his own people. And then you have how Taoism sort of got diluted because there was no one around physically in this physical realm to actually help hand down lineages and cultivational practice and things of that nature, because they were all wiped off the face of the earth. And so many people are like, whoa, how come we don't hear about that? Well, I don't know what to tell you, but you know, you do not ever assume that you need to be looking at the Chinese people. It's the machine that runs and controls that country that is the very, you know, dismantling, not the Chinese people, not the Chinese culture. People have they don't get that, you know, they have this, well, it's got to go. That's all they want to do. Is they're a culture of individuals like yourself, like myself. I mean, I've spent hundreds of years as an ordained, hang on a second. Sorry about that. As an ordained priest, as a Daoist, hundreds of years. I've done it over and over again, over and over again. This is not a news to me. And, you know, when you start getting into past lives, I like giving people at least 9 lives leading up to this very one, because it's sort of like little crumbs that people put together and they go, whoa, that makes so much sense. I mean, I've been a Catholic priest. I've been a Buddhist monk. I've been, you name it. I've experienced it to some degree, because that's part of being all things and nothing at the same time. And then you return to the resonance that helps you facilitate this servitude within this incarnation that then raises the conscious collective. It's that healing that comes with you helping someone remember who they are. And so, you know, that whole progression that we keep speaking of throughout this conversation is so fundamentally important. That's why I talk about the method. So the method is really important, and it needs to be self-evident. It needs to be something that you can acquire. If someone's telling you to sit there and just keep following my direction, and after years of doing it, you're still nowhere, you should probably stop for a minute and go, okay, am I not listening? Or is there some type of like delay in the material that this person is sharing with me that is bearing a fruit that gives me this self-realized, you know, knowing? And so there's all that element. So as you, through your own admission and what we've shared, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s, this diluted sort of bastard butchery of Taoist alchemy practices, and then people's desire to want to find them, and then people taking advantage of that by putting out a lot of diluted versions. And then people are like, well, I've done that, it doesn't work. Well, perhaps maybe you need to find someone that can refine that a little bit more for you, and it'll be evident within the teacher, within the source of information, whether this is actually, you know, substance that is being developed or just a diluted state of, you know, rhetoric that comes with this whole sort of platform. And so when we talk about the method, I always tell people, it's like, okay, well, you get these people that come in and they're like, I feel energy. I've got the Palladians coming to me, and, you know, I'm channeling this person and that person. You know, 20, 30 years ago, when I was doing exorcisms on people, they would come to me with the potential of a psychotic episode. They're going to be put in the loony bin, and I would exercise the energy through my own lineage and training, and that would present itself as a completely different thing. Now, that's within the construct of the individual user. That means that you are creating this scenario. You're resonating with the frequency that then presents itself within your field, within your experience. That's how sort of an understanding of the karmic model from a Taoist perspective works. It's different. People are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, you can walk under a ladder, and if you believe in the core of yourself that it's going to give you bad luck, it will give you bad luck. You can also walk under a ladder And because we don't believe in good and bad, evil, left, it's yin and yang. Understanding the difference between that puts you in a whole nother potential, that when you go under that ladder and you believe you're going to have good luck and $1 million is going to turn up in your bank account, and you know this to be true, it reveals itself in a whole different way. And so a lot of people play with energy, but I always like to give them the fundamentals first, get the emotional content out of the way, because that's sort of like the entry level of any sort of cultivational practice, is understanding that your emotions don't control you, you control your emotions. And people are like, whoa, I thought I was just a victim to being victim. Oh, no. When you get that, it becomes palpable. So you can move that emotion off the table like an icon on a computer screen, and you can resonate in that state and stay there. And it will be self-evident through the physical representation of that visceral experience. And so when I have people that go, oh, well, I've channeled and I've done energy and I'm good. I'm like, okay, well, is there any reason why you're here? Well, I just want a deeper understanding. Okay, well, it's like this. If you can't see it, whether it may be depending on your development, I like to help people resonate and return to being able to see it with their eyes open. It's just a sensory perception. It's just a developmental skill. Once you're given the framework, anyone can do it. When you see it with your eyes open, you don't sit there playing with energy. And it's like me telling you, I'm going to turn the lights out. I'm going to give you this Play-Doh, and I want you to play with it. It's like, oh, it's so soft and pliable. Da, da, da. This is what people do with energy, right? And if you have any sort of kink in your armor and you have being subject to the emotional content, and fear is not your best friend, fearlessness comes with that regulation, as you put it, being able to create the full spectrum. You're not getting deficiency or excess. It's a complete spectrum. It's a perfection, as I would put it, the diamond. You are getting that. So now you're in the dark, you're playing with the Play-Doh, and I turn the light on and it's a pile of shit. And people go, whoa. I'm like, this is fundamentally why it's so important that you implement the infrastructure to the developmental skills that you have, so that you are aware and you're not really having this sort of like baseline in your mind that you are fearful. And because you're fearful, you're telling yourself what you want to hear, but you're not telling yourself the truth. So you merge into you are me, I am you, but your mirroring effect from that very moment, as the gift is your offering, is that fear-based seed. And so when you go into something more problematic, like a physical healing, a mental, emotional healing, you will be subject to those limitations that you have put on yourself. So when you get into the alchemy within magic, when I teach people magic construct, which is a much deeper, if someone wants to call it new age language, a deeper manifestation with that infrastructure. There are layers to it. So you get right down to the last dot, not just, oh, I'll let the universe provide. Well, no. Daoist alchemy is very calculated. Nothing goes to waste. You once you create that relationship with the universe, and you're using the constellations to mimic that very response, you move the energies, you navigate them. It comes in all forms, as you mentioned before, that universal environmental thing. Feng Shui, I teach body dowsing, where you get deeper into identifying power centers, vortices, all these things that are part of the construct that you're experiencing. And people get kind of like sober when I go, oh yeah, I'm talking to you. You got like 7 vortices in your room right now. And they're like, what? Well, your eyes are open. Use your hands as a tuning fork. Boom. Oh, wow, I can feel energy. Now go over to this point in the room. Even though you can't see it, it's a skill that I can teach you. And they go, holy crap, it feels like a fire hydrant of energy coming out of there. That is always taking place. Your awareness is you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And so developing those skills, all of a sudden you're not playing with doo-doo, you're playing with rainbows from, unicorn's dust. And it's profound, and it is embodying the mother, and it is bearing the fruit of healing, the fruit of returning to that space. Do you find that you come across this type of sort of scenario yourself?
Well, there are a few things in there that I think are interesting that I'd like to draw out. I think that there's some kind of cosmic cycling that we are in a phase of I call it accelerated revelation. You know, where not only are things happening faster, but they're happening to more people more often. And so we encounter these scenarios in which, on the one hand, an example like you yourself having sudden opening and clear resonance beyond what your teacher had cultivated over as many years, just all at once, you know. And then it sounds like you used both what was being given to you through the temple and teacher conduit and through the source conduit to develop, refine, and kind of integrate those openings. But a lot of the time, somebody gets opened either incidentally as a normie walking through life, or through working with a kind of incomplete teacher in some way, and then they're at a loss. Either they misunderstand what they understand, or they're deeply uncomfortable and they need help, or both. And so the people that come to you and say, I'm channeling, I understand the energy, and but the question always is, so why are you here? Which, as you said, so in my life and friendships and student relationships, like people, there is that type of student that shows up that they don't come to class because they're different, they're special, and they want to engage you as a peer, which everybody's my peer. I'm an equal with everyone. It's an easy, fluid thing for me to do.
From the Jade Emperor, the student is the teacher is the student.
There you go. And I think often that is actually true in past life cycles. But there's this type of student that comes that they're saying they don't need anything, but what they want is for you to tell them they don't need anything, that they're already complete,
mm-hmm.
and that they don't really have to do anything different. Just you have your own way, just be you. And there's some kind of truth to that in a way, I suppose, but
then they wouldn't be in front of you.
But then they wouldn't be like, so why are you calling? Why are you? What are we doing here?
That seems to be
in this way, like good, smart human. Like so let's go for a walk and talk about whatever, But if you're here, like asking, like, what is the Tao and why should I care? Then you're both seeing and not seeing your own lack. And if that's ignored, may or may not, anything could happen. Maybe it all works out and full realization is just around the corner. But more likely this gap and tension persists, and you'll continue to be uncomfortable and encounter obstacles that you don't have the tools to move through or around.
Oh yeah, I mean, There are no coincidences. And, that really comes down to realizing that, the simplicity of the bellows. Everything, you're all things and nothing at the same time. And you're seeking the mother, that Wu Ji, that center point, that return. And this being the center point of your physicality, being the center point of the electromagnetic spectrum, where many will offer this idea, if you follow me, I will give you the rainbow body. We will be part as one. And I'm like, I've unfortunately heard this many times, and many Taoist seekers have been very disappointed, where they go off on a Buddhist path, or they're attempting to acquire a Taoist alchemy practices. They were misled or lied. No, I'm not going to say misled. They were lied to. And so where would that even come from? Well, look at the sun, the powerful source of the sun within your macro of a micro expression, and you realize that the magnetic fluidity of the earth creates this ability to filter that spectrum in what we call the rainbow. And that center point of the rainbow is the center point of you and your energetic potential, reflected as what you would perceive within a Taoist path, a Dantian, within a Hindu path, a chakra, an energy center, something of that nature. That's the potential that you can take that to the bank and go, whoa, I never heard about it like that. Wow, that makes absolute sense to me. That's a beginning of your journey. That's the potential that you have acquired just by listening to this conversation. The visceral experience that you had from that epiphany is all you need to get started and enter into wherever that is on your journey, and realize that your potential is limited by all things and nothing at the same time. What? That anything is the old expression, anything is possible. To find that return, that center point, can be instantaneous. That present moment is now. It's not in the past or the future. It's now. All things are represented that way. And so then you remove the place, person, or thing. You go from first person to third person to no person. And that's how you obtain this awareness. And conceptually, it sounds, well, I got that. Okay, Jifu, let's go. Well, that's conceptual until otherwise noted. When you can show me that through the practices I give you that could be instantaneous from a neuroplasticity perspective, let's downgrade the access of the lineage and the high ascension of the direct source information from a Taoist seeker's perspective, as I channel my teachers and they're giving me the dialogue of the monologue. So the dialogue within my teachers are facets of perfection of the diamond, and the monologue is the mother. That's the direct information. It's all part and parcel. It's all that symbiotic fluidity, that oscillating effect that comes with the contracting and expanding. And so when you get there, you will show me. And so from a neuroplasticity perspective, someone might dilute it down to the mirror neurons at the base of your brain is replicating what you experience. And that's where I tell people you can be instantly acquire the 30 plus years of my own experience in this space, teaching people alchemy instantaneously with that very understanding of the neuroplasticity. It could be as simple as that. And then it could be nothing at the same time. Jifu, you're really mind-bending me right now. Well, there's part of that power that comes with the Taoist seeking path that you return to that. And when you are Wu Wei, when you are effortless action, effortless effort, this will be presented by how serendipitous, how synchronized you are with this flow. And that when you potentially look at something that is half empty, it's actually half full. That's when you're at your lowest, you're at your highest, the contracting and expanding. Once again, returning back to the simplicity of all things. And people get all, oh my goodness. You had me at, I'll have whatever she's having. I want that. And and that's a beautiful seed, a beginning of something profound in your journey, in your incarnation, realizing that knowing is remembering. When you remember, that remembrance is when you return to the center point, the source, the Wu Ji, and then it all reveals itself. And that can be a path that could be potential. I'm just going to check this. I may have to short on a battery, and I don't have any charge. We may have to cut this short. I think you manifested it, Ian. I think, but how does that resonate with your own teachings?
Yeah, it makes sense to me, and I think that there's some patterns of karma, fate, patterns of the interactions of yin and yang playing out that make it, as you say, not coincidental. And who's in the room with you is there because they already have a certain resonance and probably history. And that's one of the things that facilitates a more sudden realization experience, or just kind of level up, awakening experience, just kind of the next door opens. So I think that part of what enables that is this fractal patterning of
you're getting all quantumish on us. I like it.
Well, it's just in my view, that the quantum theory and the spiritual models of the world, they're both generated by humans to explain this ineffable pattern, and it should be no surprise that they converge on a similar, if not eventually the same, vision of the way things really are. So I think that there is this synchronicity, this inevitable synchronicity of between the teacher and the students, that is kind of somersaulting, catapulting through this spiraling time, and then from a more linear perspective, there is this this global universal happening right now, where the energy is changing and people have greater capacity sooner. And I certainly see it in my kids that it's just a whole nother level of directness. And I think that's not just, my kids. I think that's this generational progression that we are witnessing, and as we embody our roles in service in this way, we have the potential to facilitate a smoother path for people who are either open or opening quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I've got 6 kids of my own, and I'm aspiring to the number 9. So maybe if I can convince my wife, we might get to that last family member, just to be a devoted Taoist. I'll stick to the 9 number, but it really does. You teach them some of the first things. I've got kids that are 12 years old all the way down to 8 months old. 12, 10, 8, 5, 3, and then 8 months. And so, the first 3 are quite aware of their sensory perception, and I've taught them simple things like it's always good to have a baseline being able to differentiate between conscious and unconscious process. So, having a fundamental understanding of something as simplistic as hypnosis is always good, just to get an idea of your reality, what you're perceiving, just to get a wet your whistle. And so I've taught them that, remote viewing, healing, mental, emotional, physical stuff. And they do it like, man, I feel like Dad can just sit back, and I'm just like, I need this or that. And it's so tuned in so quickly.
Yeah.
It's just like, whoa, it's instantaneous. I'm used to witnessing from that, the Latsu interaction and then going straight into physical healing, 30 years ago was like, that's crazy, So the first thing I saw, it's like I went from meditation, never did it before, to instant silence, where it was obtained instantaneously, to channeling Latsu, to the following week witnessing a physical healing of gangrenous flesh going back to pink in color in 40 minutes. And that's what I see on a daily, is this physical representation of returning. And it just happens. And people come to me for all types of different things. You're that guy. My grandmother's in a coma. They've told her she's going to die. And then I'm like, no, that's fine. She'll be fine. And they're like, whoa, they told me no. And then the next day she comes out of the coma. It's like, the doctor's like, what is going on here? This doesn't seem real. It's just, from a dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell. I don't know whether you've ever heard of this guy. He's, been involved in out-of-body experiences for the better part of 60 years of his natural-born life. He's a spring chicken. He's only 80 years old. And, he's a dear friend of mine, and we have deep conversations of the nature of reality. And he has this sort of relationship between intellect and intuitive behavior, and he spent most of his life intuitive, but he does access intellect, as he was an NASA physicist. So he spent many years playing in that intellect role. And he's, the probability is altered once you put your attention intention to it. So his model of largest consciousness system, a reflection of the nature of reality, comes in more zeros and ones, and the mathematical sums that express, physics and science today, which is such a young language for things that Ian and I speak of that are thousands and thousands of years old. This new language they call science is only a couple of 100 years old, yet it seems to be something that people resonate with to help them understand. And sometimes I will reflect on that, and I will share certain things that will make it relatable to the seeker to help them acquire that next level of level up using, quantum physics or science or something of that nature that presents it to them in a way that they slide into that next level of consciousness. But probabilities change. So, attention, intention is literally all bets are off. So when you really do understand this, you're all and nothing at the same time. The potential is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. So you acquiring a sort of like, I always tell people, if you come from physiology, psychology, neurology, quantum, you are limited because you have one mindset. And so belief systems can be problematic. Some people would dismiss ours and go, well, you're just saying it's all Taoist. Actually, there's many different levels to that. There's from Ian and myself, there's a religious aspect of this higher level of lineage and attuning to the spirits that guide us, that are teaching us from direct source from the mother, that gives us this insight to share. And then there's this, a metaphysical, physiological, philosophy that most people like to lean on because it's benign and they don't feel like they're adopting a cult or something of that nature. They're like, oh, it's so philosophy is it's so nice to just read off a Tao Te Ching verse, and I just feel so enlightened because it's a living scripture. That word is imprinted deep at a subatomic level. That's why you resonate to it, because it's gone from many thousands of years and you're attuning to that. And that visceral experience is what is that self-realization, that knowledge, knowing, oh, and it's like, it wasn't the Bible, it wasn't the Dharma, it was the Tao Te Ching that resonated with you because it's relevant to where you are in your own realization of returning to who you are from past lives. And it just comes in and like, whoa, that makes sense, Jifu. Ah, wow, now I got it. Good. And when you think you have it, you don't have it at all. But just keep the journey is beautiful. That's the part of the journey. That's part of the exciting part. And then when you refer to the fractal pattern, I really resonate with that and understand that it's a cycle. Even natural form, the identification of yin and yang is that representation, of that fractal pattern that you speak of.
Yeah.
And that returns to the all or nothing. And you can inject and alter the probability, as Tom Campbell would say, by changing your attention intention, and things that would be seem supernatural or paranormal are just one thought process away. But it's that palpability. It's not just a delusional state. You need to refine the method that makes it repeatable, that you can identify when that's actually happening, not just like, the universe will provide for me. And I mean, I like that new age spiritual stuff, but it's like, it can be problematic. And it's not providing for you today because, you got into a car accident and your boyfriend broke up with you, and, you got foreclosed on your house, and, God hates me. Why does God hate me? And we could go down that path. My goodness. And that's just part of, being limited by that emotional content from a Taoist perspective, when that's the first thing you should move off the table. That's the distraction, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that as practitioners, as teachers, as humans, we need to try to keep a foot in at least two different ways of seeing. One is this causal sequence in which we can apply our will, or the appearance of that. And the other is this understanding that in the process of non-being coming into being in each moment, and this cosmic causal sequence of like billiard balls hitting one another, one thing causing the next, there's actually no space for will and intention and modification. And so my relationship to that is that we live, we're in this body. I have a name, I have a body with boundary, and I'm moving through time and space. And the natural way to make sense of that includes agency, will, changing the way we think, doing practice, practicing hard. But at the same time, all of those choices are also prefigured, in my view. That these words coming out of my mouth, what happens next, the choice to practice 8 hours a day for 3 or 5 years or whatever it was, and all of this thing where your experience of it is a certain way. Your experience is, I am being disciplined, I am applying my will, I am creating this pattern, I am changing my life, I am changing my body. All of that is true, but it's true on a level, a useful level, not to be dismissed, on a level below the profound, below the mystery. And in the level of the mystery, the dance of light playing out, the dance of becoming, cycling back to being and non-being, and repeating, that all of our experience is included in that fixed, fractal, apparently sequential, but actually simultaneous structure. And so I think it's, one shouldn't allow that understanding, insofar as they can integrate it, to persuade them not to do something, not to practice, not to take a vow, not to find a teacher, not to. It is a roundabout way of understanding Wu Wei, which is do nothing, is a very active path because it is getting out of the way of what is already happening. So there's no friction and suffering. So in my view, it's Michael Ondaatje, this Canadian poet, says there's a trick with a knife that I'm learning to do, and so you can kind of feel the sort of living on edge, so to speak, of that. And I feel like keeping a foot in both of those understandings. That I wake up today, I'm choosing to practice. It feels like choice. I'm going to treat it like that because it's useful, but I'm going to understand that that is a bridge fiction, a misunderstanding that gets me from here to there. But at the same time, I'm going to hold this peaceful, liberating understanding that everything has already happened. Everything is fixed. The past and the future are simultaneous with the now. And so the experience of applying one's agency to change that structure is a delusion, but it's a useful one.
Yeah, it's like remembering. How I see it, so someone would be like, "Oh, someone came to you and they said they need help with their grandmother," and da 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 da. It's like all I'm doing is bringing a resonance that returns that person to remember who they are, and poof. It's not like I'm sitting here waving a magic wand going, with my intention, you will raise from the dead and your spirit will rise out of your physical body and you will let everyone know the power of the Tao. No, it's about remembering. It's like all I did was show you the resonance and you went, oh, I remember that. And you fall right into it and it replicates itself. Now, when you really understand how simplistic that is, and there's a journey to cultivate to that, or you can embody it immediately, there becomes this incredible realization that, you're all and nothing at the same time. When you understand that, when you don't bring in a place, person, or a thing, you're first person, third person, no person. There is no title to what it is. There is no I am asking the universe, if you identify and know you are this now moment, why are you asking yourself for help? Why are you asking the universe to bring this energy in, or you embody it? That's it. That present moment is Wuji. It's now. And that's where the practices are so powerful to obtain that. And when you come to that realization that and the Jet Emperor always reminds me of this, and I teach this, when you believe, when you know you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing. So that's that fear-based emotional content level up of this now moment. And once you get past that and you don't identify with this physical body as the very flesh and blood that is who you are in this incarnation, crazy things happen. So then you tap into those 50 trillion cells and the alchemy becomes very palpable. That substance is very real and you can transmute it. There are many different things over decades of doing this stuff, and it's exciting. And then I'm like, okay, now moving right along. I don't get all warm and fuzzy about separating the electric from magnetic and wanting to charge someone. Like, I'll show you, stand on this towel and I will put a charge through your body that gives you a curly hair by the end of it. people get all excited when you hit that pinnacle of part of the processes. You're like, wow, who knew that that was possible until it was possible? And then you move past that. I've always, obtaining this sort of like supernatural, paranormal type of stuff has always been profound for me. Every day I witness something, I'm very grateful as if it's the first time I've seen it. But I also am my personality gets warm and fuzzy about witnessing a mental, emotional, physical healing. That excites me. Not so much wanting to use telekinesis or psychokinesis or other things that are more effects of changing someone's perception of consciousness, but then they can be very limited. It's like on the journey. Okay, you achieved that. I went and I wanted my goal was to do 100 push-ups. I achieved 100 push-ups. Now move right along. As we would refer to, it's like it's nothing more than a story. That's it. You can create that. Now you've embodied that, you've embraced that, you've raised your consciousness, you've expanded and move right along. Now some people get fixated in that, and quite frankly, traveling around the world and training under different people, even right down to I came across a guy by the name of John Chang, who has who's been known to be the Magnus of Java, who was one of the very few people, you may have heard of him from the 80s, that can set things on fire. Well, I came across him, there are no coincidences, through one of my employers, who is one of the biggest, basically owns Indonesia. And John worked for him. And I worked for him as the spiritual guru, healer, all that kind of stuff. And I'd be called out across, all different sort of places, whether I had to be flown out or I'd do something remotely, which is quite easy. But he would be like, you remind me of John. And I'm like, really? And so that's how I got in. I ended up having communication with him briefly through that relationship, because he worked for, Mr. Damati, that was his name for many years. And you do this instant healing. It's like, you're obscurely weird because you're a guilo, and that doesn't happen. Like white people don't have access. Now that's very derogatory and dismissive, but I never took offense to it. It's like, you have this access point, you're teaching this stuff, you're guiding my family, you're creating all these other variables within this space of consciousness, and it's altering the direction of things. I spent many years doing that for many people. And he spoke on this one thing, and if you've ever read the book Magnus of Java, I don't know whether you ever have, but
I think so, a while back. Yeah.
There's a scene where John Chang is with this guy, and he was holding a banana, and Mr. Damati was like, it's like crazy how you do these physical healings on myself and my daughters and my son, and it goes on. He goes, very much like John. I'll tell you this one story about John. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, I was holding this banana and I was in my kitchen and he was on the other side of and this was before I referenced the actual book, right? So that was mind blowing to me. If you read the book, he's holding this banana and John's on the other side of the room and he uses his sword fingers and he goes, I just sliced the banana. And Mr. Damati's like, ha ha, there's nothing. The banana is solid. And he goes, peel it. And he peeled the banana back and it just slid right off. And you look at those energetic potential, and I get all warm and fuzzy. And when I spoke to him briefly, there's like level of deception with them. I think his practice was Mo Pai. In any case, it was, referring to 72 different levels of cultivation. Sure, yeah. When he started handing some of it out to me, I was like, "You're just trying to feed me some BS," but that's okay. It was fun having conversation and getting to that point. I think at this point, I think he passed away a while ago. But the point being is this potential and what we have access to is just, and I've come across people that do that, and I've learned how to supercharge and separate electric, zap people. It gets okay. Now what? Now what do you do with it? You know, I've come across people that are levitating before my very eyes. I've come across 3 that levitate. I'm a big guy, like I'm like 270 pounds, like old bodybuilder. You can't get rid of the muscle, but it's like, what would it, you know, you're levitating, but in essence, on a personal level, I'll be honest with you, the guy was an asshole. He wasn't very nice. So you have this cultivational practice, and one of the red flags, I believe, from a Taoist seeker's path is not remembering who you are, and that servitude, that selflessness is part of those identification. If you're getting more into the obsession with the alchemy just for your own benefit, for, you know, manipulation and profit, perhaps maybe you might want to take a moment and process and sit with whatever is giving you this messaging that that's what your main goal is like, I just want to cultivate, I want to do all the circus tricks, I want to get, and look, everyone goes there. That's part of the alchemy. But at a certain point, through your own admission, through your own realization, through your own journey, you should be able to go, now I need to expand even more. And so you're not just mesmerized by this supernatural power stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if the alchemy is working and progressing as it should, that one naturally loses interest in those things, you know, and because the selflessness is not just a choice; it's what happens if you're practicing correctly, you know. So I think that you know, people who get stuck like that had either incomplete training or had a karmic obstacle that was larger than the forces they met it with. But you know, there is an effect of you know, charisma, of the apparent presence of spirit that is persuasive to the student in ways that gives them both enthusiasm and confidence, which empowers their practice. And so, you know, feats like that, or like, you know, in a Tibetan Buddhist context, it might be like a handprint in a rock, or, you know, some demonstration of the
ability to alter the distortion.
Yeah, that the material will give way, and you know, I think it can have a inspiration of devotion effect that in itself is not negative. You know, if the teacher is limited and deceptive, and like also like some of those teachers in the West in the 60s and 70s, like if their intention is not good, but they have these ability, you know, some sort of ability to make an impression, as it were, then you know, it can create an ecosystem that is heavy and damp and does damage. But though, you know, the ability to make an impression for a teacher that has good intentions and a full spectrum of practice, and the ability to transmit source, can have a positive effect in generating this devotion. And yet, teachers in that position lose interest in those demonstrations for the most part, is my experience.
Yeah, I, you know, if I am inspired to do some of the more profound supernatural stuff, sure. I like doing group healings.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a healing thing, you know,
The group healing is always fun. Like I get a room. I've had up to 1,000 people at one time physically, online. You do it and you connect them all. And they'll come in all shapes and forms. Mental, emotional, physical healings will take place. And it's an amplitude, a visceral amplitude that is second to none. And because you're stacking all those energetic potential together and you're linking them, it's just so crazy. The pulpability of it is just nuts. And people just get so excited because they walk away from that returning to themselves. They've all collectively become in service to each other, which in turn is in service to themselves. And so that group experience is mind-blowing because there's just miracles on a spectrum that are crazy, that people just, had this problem, that problem, this problem, all gone, this, that, something else. I mean, you and I know what I speak of. I mean, I've been experiencing it for years. If you're on the path, you will witness these types of things constantly because it's just part of remembering that resonance. You'll be the witness. You'll realize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting part of the path because it is, it does kind of inspire a grasping in both the practitioner and the observer, and so, I mean, so I think the healing context is different because, like, the positive effect is the essence of what's happening, but levitation or catching things on fire is in a different category, and it's a performative power that if one puts energy into developing, they've redirected that energy from a cultivation path that is more beneficial to more beings.
Amen to that, brother. My goodness, what an incredible conversation today.
Thank you.
I really, really am so grateful that you were able to spend time with us today and share your insight. And I know everyone's going to love this conversation because it just reinforces their knowing of returning to who they are. I will, I'm not sure, whatever social media, I'm going to put it under this podcast. So people know where to find you, find your teaching. I want my students, my OGs, my subscribers to go out and take a closer look at Ian's teachings and really get involved with what it is that he's sharing to help you remember who you are, because that's what this is about. And so many people get so weird when I do that. I'm like, but you're teaching stuff. Why would you want someone else? It's like, really? You're missing the whole point. If you're afraid or in fear of someone, that, they're gonna take your followers, they're gonna take your students, I was like, really? We already know where you're at, and that's okay. That's part of the collective consciousness, and you will reveal yourself and the true nature of that as you continue to progress. But if you are me, I am you, what is there to be jealous of, in fear of? There is nothing, because those emotions do not present themselves, because they're an expression of the limited humanness that we call the human condition.
Yep.
So I will ask in closing one question. What is your definition of consciousness?
Well, I mean, it's a word that is imprecise to begin with, so consciousness seems to indicate a kind of self and ego and agency, at first blush. And so that's not a very interesting way to think about it, though, and not a very productive way on a path of enlightenment. And so to me, consciousness is the pervasive clarity and potential for coming into being in every granular particle of existence. So it is the emptiness in the center. It is the capacity to create. It is the inherent understanding that we may be that may be obscured to us, but it is that pure original brightness out of which all things come, and if we're lucky, something that we have the opportunity to recognize.
Beautiful. I've done hundreds of these podcasts and no one has ever given me the same answer. Amen to that. That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, my dear friend. Again, I look forward to a further conversation. I'd like a part 2, so I'm just throwing it out there in the ether so we can prep ourselves in the near future. Because I'll reach out to you after this podcast and let's set up another time, because we you ain't seen nothing yet. We just got started.
Yeah.
I'm really, really grateful for this conversation. I'm very, very grateful for you. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me today. It's just been really beautiful. It's been very expansive and just all about all the things that we speak of, which is that now moment. So thank you, my dear friend.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And I want to thank you. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. And I am your humble servant and Sifu Daoist Master San Qing. And I'll see you on the next one, guys.